Okay, my microphone is on. Keith, can you just talk?
Hello, can you hear me?
Barely. Speak
Am
up.
I coming
Speak
through?
up, man. Okay, sorry. One of this clicky thing. I hate when I have like an email notification. You know those people who have like a phone or whatever, and they have like 50 text messages and like missed calls and email notifications, or like hundreds of thousands.
Clear them.
Yeah, that freaks me out when I see that. If I see one, I'm like, oh.
Yeah, that, and do you know those people that have like 50 million tabs open in like 14 different windows?
Yeah.
Madness. Yeah.
Oh man, that freaks me out too much.
Psychopaths.
I'm like, get your shit organized. How are you gonna know where you were? What if there's something really good and you close them all?
If you're the type of person that has like 14 tabs open or like a million tabs with different windows, you're a psychopath and we'll probably be talking about you soon.
Yeah, exactly. Get ready for your own episode of the That Chapter podcast, which you are now listening to. Shock Jocks, Mike and Keith there on the ones and twos. Hey. Wah, 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 wah. So yeah, I guess we should just kind of begin.
Okay, let's do it.
Cool. All right. Hey, you, and welcome. My name is Mike, and in this, oh man, this is so much. I love doing podcasts. We're just talking here tonight. And in this video, so in this video, we have a very particular story to tell you. It's one you're probably aware of, but we're gonna get in deep to it because I think it's really, really interesting, and it's what happened in a certain house in New York, and it's a house which has spawned countless stories. I want to do an episode on this because Amityville, I always think, is like, it's where I think of it as like the dawn of horror. For a start, it spawned so many books and movies, and I think it's kind of where the modern day haunted house story almost owes everything to what happened in this place, in this town called Amityville. Now, the horror part of it, which I'm sure you're all aware of, didn't really happen with scary stories of demons, but rather what happened one night in November of 1974, when an entire family met their end. And that in itself is a horror. The stories of, the weird events after, the make you eat bullshit, which we'll talk about, that'll never actually live up to what happened, I think, in the Defeo family house, a house which has now become synonymous with horror, with haunted houses, with spooky things. And listen, Keith's here. So speaking of haunted houses and spooky things, Keith, what's going on in your haunted house today?
So I have had a bit of not really something weird.
Something weird?
Yeah. Okay, so you put up a video of the attic.
I did, yeah. Everybody, it's on That Chapter Podcast YouTube channel. Go check it out.
So the attic's always been a little strange in the house.
It is freaky.
I've been up there plenty of times. Anytime someone new comes over to the house, it's the first thing I show them.
Look at that!
You should check out this attic.
Yeah,
it's
you'll never guess.
Yeah. And they love it. I've been up there like multiple times. But we don't actually use the attic. We don't have a lot of crap around the house. So the attic is still like
storage.
Yeah, we just don't hang on to things. We're not very sentimental, so we haven't got a lot of stuff in the house. So the attic there's nothing up there. But today, we done a little early Christmas shopping for my daughter, so something came, but I had to hide it obviously. So I was putting it up in the attic, and when I went up to the attic, the first thing I seen was there was a slitter in the middle of the floor.
A slitter?
A slitter, yeah.
So for those of you who don't know what a slitter is, it's a ball.
It's kind of like a baseball.
It's similar to a baseball. It's what they use in a sport we have here in Ireland called hurling. It's a ball, you hit it with a hurley, and you score points with it. So but essentially it just looks like a baseball, very similar to a baseball.
It's a super.
You do not play hurling.
I do not. No. It's a super old slitter as well. Like it's old, and what's really strange is I said like I've been up there multiple times.
Yeah.
Today when I went up, it's the first thing I seen when I went up. So it's not like I was rooting around the attic.
Yeah.
And it was right there. Let me show you a photo.
Okay.
I took a photo of it.
So it's not like, you're rooting around through boxes and it fell. Whoa, okay. I'm looking at the photo. I'll put this in the YouTube version of this episode. Wow, that's really, really old.
Do you know what's really strange as well? So I went back and had a look at that video that you put up, and like I really struggled. I went frame by frame trying to look for the ball because it was where the video kind of pans over.
Okay.
The video's a little grainy, but I can't see the ball.
Oh,
I couldn't see it. It's
that
really
is weird.
strange.
That's really creepy.
I don't know. Like it's an old ball, and I swear to God, like I know it like it could have been there the whole time, but honestly, I took another photo of where it actually is.
Yeah.
So you can see the ball there.
Okay, so I see where this is in relation to the video that's on the channel.
But that's the first thing. So I took that video as soon as I popped my head up out of the attic. So it's the first thing I seen.
Yeah,
when I went up.
That is weird. It's definitely something you would notice. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Exactly. And like it's
Send me those pictures. I put them in the video.
Especially, it's kind of hard to tell. Well, you can kind of see it from the photo, but like it's still a little white, the ball. So like when I have we don't have a light in the attic, so I use a torch. And the torch kind of lit up the ball.
Right.
It was nearly luminescent a little bit. So today when I seen it. So I'd never seen it before.
Man,
I don't know where this
that's
ball came from. It's
bizarre.
an old ball.
And there's no like windows or anything in your attic
No.
where you could have, I don't know. Well, I mean, you would have noticed a fucking
Yeah.
broken window in your attic.
Yeah, no window. It's like it's pitch black up there.
Is there
It's dark.
boxes in there? Like,
There's
it couldn't
nothing
have
up there.
rolled out of something
That's it.
in
There's
the storm.
nothing up there.
It's
Nothing.
been pretty stormy lately.
There is one box up there. It's my box, and it's empty. It's a box filled with empty boxes. There was nothing in it, and I don't own a slither. I don't know where it came from. Very,
You
very
were
strange.
Hearing it here first. Keith's gonna die soon. His house is haunted.
I was actually going to bring it today to show
No,
you.
don't fucking bring it to my place.
I didn't want to touch it.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't touch it, man. Leave
Yeah.
it there.
Okay.
See if it moves.
Oh, okay.
Keep an
Yeah.
eye on it. Don't
Yeah,
touch
yeah.
it. See if it moves of its own volition.
Oh.
Haunted. Maybe that's what's causing the haunting.
That'd be weird. And I do hear things in the middle of the night. What if the ball? I mean,
Do you actually?
yeah,
Or
like,
is
I hear,
this bullshit for...
no. I generally hear it. Now it doesn't sound like a ball falling, but I do hear noises up in the attic. But it's an old house as well, so it's just I don't know what's a normal noise for an old house from the 1930s and
Yeah.
ghosts playing Hurley.
So,
I don't know.
Yeah, well, hey, listen, gotta get bored being, living for
That's it.
eternity. Okay, so that's freaky as
That's
shit.
right. I'll keep you updated, man. I'm still trying to get to the bottom of the names that are inscribed on
Yeah.
the wall. I have asked my neighbour about it.
Mm-hmm.
That was
Who
bad.
still calls you Bill or whatever.
Brian. Yeah,
Brian.
He still called me Brian. Yeah, it was a bad idea. As in, he didn't have a clue what I was talking about, and it was a very awkward conversation.
Mhm.
Still call me Brian to this day, even though I have corrected. When I told him that, eventually I told him that my name is Keith, and he's like, "Nope, never going to remember that." And then
Moving
proceeded
on.
to call me Ryan, and then corrected himself and called me Brian.
So he knew.
Yeah, he was like, Ryan. Sorry, not Ryan. Brian. I think, no, Keith.
Yeah, wrong on both ends, but I'll take it. All right, so well, there you have it, folks. That's another update from Keith on his haunted house. I'm sure there'll be many more to come, so stay tuned. All right, now to get into this main story. Today's story. This is a strange case in many ways, but the strangest is that where this sensational crime took place has become far more famous than any of the actual humans involved. Amityville is a small, well-to-do village within the town of Babylon, sitting on the southern shore of Long Island. Prior to the late 1970s, the village wasn't really known for much at all. Amityville is a very unremarkable place altogether. However, nowadays, I'm sure you've all heard the name. It has very different connotations.
I took a walk around it using Google Maps, and it is, yeah, it's a nice little town. It's kind of what I expect of a quiet American suburb
Right.
to be. Yeah, weird. Google has the house blurred out though for some reason. I don't know.
Really, it's probably the owners of the house. I mean, we all know what it looks like. So
Right, yeah,
it's like
just-
the most famous house in horror
Yeah.
movie history.
They blurred out the house, but now I'll also just Google what the house looks like. And it'll show me.
exactly. Yeah, gotcha. But you know what, interestingly, is that to tie this into even more like modern true crime, is that the Long Island serial killer, Rex Heuermann, he lives nearby.
No way. Okay, interesting.
Yeah, he was just caught recently. Alleged Long Island serial killer, I should say. Hasn't gone to trial yet, but he lived pretty close to Amityville. So it's a place full of horror, and full of horror also in the visual sense, with more than 24 movies being based in the town, where even just the name sparks fear. The Amityville Horror, Amityville 2, The Possession, Amityville Treaty, Amityville 4, The Evil Escapes, The Amityville Curse, Amityville It's About Time, Amityville A New Generation, Amityville Dollhouse, The Amityville Horror, that's the remake, The Amityville Haunting, The Amityville Asylum, Amityville Death House, Amityville Playhouse, Amityville No Escape, Amityville Vanishing Point, Amityville Legacy. Oh, the Amityville Terror. 4 movies came out in the same year. Amityville Prison, Amityville The Awakening, Amityville Evil Never Dies, Amityville Exorcism, The Amityville Murders, The Amityville Harvest, and Amityville Poltergeist, Witches of Amityville Academy, Amityville Island, and The Amityville Vampire. That came out in 2021.
First of all, excellent content.
Thank you, me just listing all the movies. There's a lot though, that's like
There
20
is.
movies.
I was very surprised when I seen the amount of movies that were made about this house. It's,
And that's not even getting the. I'm sure if you went into books, the list would just
That's it, yeah,
never
yeah.
fucking end.
yeah. I think I've obviously haven't seen them all. I remember the remake of the Amityville Horror.
Is that the one with Ryan Reynolds?
Yes,
I think I've
yeah,
seen that
yeah.
one.
That was good. I liked it.
I honestly can't remember anything about it other than just Ryan Reynolds is in it.
Yeah.
That's it. End of story. So I'm sure most of you are familiar with the story of Amityville featured in the original movie from 1979, but most people are completely unaware, or at least only know the gist of what actually happened. The very true horror story that took place a year before the one that might have happened, but most likely didn't happen. That's what Amityville will become, most famous for. So the book, The Amityville Horror, and the subsequent movie, it tells the story, right, of the Lutz family, George and Kathleen, Kathy Lutz, and Kathy's 3 young children from her previous marriage. And so, the story, not long after moving into their dream home in December of 1975, The family claimed that they experienced a variety of frightening events that they would attribute to a haunting. George told interviewers that he believed they were sharing the home with several demons, which is pretty cool. Now, there's actually a bit of a horror movie crossover too. It's one of the big reasons the Lutzes and the Amityville stories got so much press in the late 70s, apart from the book, obviously, was, the involvement of the famous supernatural investigators and maybe bullshit artists, ? Ed and Lorraine Warren. Obviously known now for the Conjuring movies that they're in, where they're superhero movies, their superhero universe that they have. And they investigated haunting and apparently became quite close with George Lutz. Lorraine especially felt strongly that the house was infested with evil spirits. Over the years, there was rumors, of course, of Indian burial grounds and escaped witches, and the story essential of haunting and the horror has been evolving ever since, pretty much all of it. Complete bullshit, but hey, that's for you to decide.
Definitely Ed and Lorraine Warren. They were like full-on con artists.
Oh yeah, they were full of shit.
Oh yeah, they believed their own bullshit, which is the worst part of it. But yeah, as you pointed out, like the story really it gained significant media attention in the 1970s. I feel like this was in part due to the fact that America or the United States was thirsty for horror stories like this during this period. Notably, The Exorcist was released in 1973.
Oh, wow. So that was a year before the actual events of the real murders that took place there.
Yeah, so not long before. And I know we briefly discussed how The Exorcist really drastically altered the American perspective on paranormal, nearly almost overnight in the Ouija episode that we did. But where I really feel it's important to just emphasize the profound cultural impact that this film had at the time. So before this film, the demons and the devil was not something that everyday Americans would think about or care about. However, this film, it ignited a surge in interest in the supernatural, particularly demonic possession. People, they became more curious about the idea of evil forces and the possibility of possession. The movie, it prompted a lot of discussions and debate with American society about the existence of evil, possession, and the role of religion in confronting such a phenomena. But the film, it also contributed to a heightened fear of the occult and the occult practices associated with it. And occult shops and books on demonology, they really gained popularity as people, they sought out to understand so they could better protect themselves against these potential evil forces. So it really was the beginning of the satanic panic in America, and cases like the Amityville hauntings, they were just one of many that got picked up in this tidal wave of media coverage till it all just came to a head in the 80s.
Yeah. And then even the 80s, then you have all the satanic panic and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's the whole thing. The whole Amityville horror just comes from, there was a murder, a family was murdered. But the real story is the ghost. And it's no, can we start the first one? That's actually a lot more interesting because this actually happened.
Yeah.
Right. This is a real story of a whole family that was horrifically murdered while they slept. And then they just, but the bullshit is,
And that's the thing, it's just, sure, when I was researching this, obviously I knew what we were doing today, and I was researching it, but the actual story of the murder, it's always just a footnote of the actual story.
It's the montage at the start of the movies and the books where it's a 30-second montage showing the murders, and it's and then the Lutz family moved in.
Exactly. Yeah. They have a 40-minute documentary. 3 minutes is about the actual murder, and then the rest is all about these alleged hauntings.
Yeah, exactly. Well, the murders are so much more interesting.
Yeah.
Ronnie Defeo is a fascinating character.
He is. Yeah.
So, up until 1974, home it was to the 7 members of the Defeo family. This is the real Amityville horror, folks. Italians. The family was made up of Dad, Ronald Sr., 43, Mom, Louise, 42, and their 5 children. 23-year-old Ronald Jr., 18-year-old Dawn, 13-year-old Allison, 12-year-old Mark, and the youngest, 9-year-old John Matthew. The family lived at 112 Ocean Avenue in Amityville. They'd been living there for the better part of a decade since buying the house in 1965. To most, the family were typical of the area and seen as a close-knit bunch, but nothing extraordinary, nothing weird about them, nothing mad. While Ronald Sr. had earned himself a reputation around town as a successful businessman through his job as a manager of an auto dealership, his namesake, Ronald Jr., was busy trying his best to undo any goodwill or respect his father had found. Ronald Jr. was better known locally as Butch, and old Ronnie Jr., he was a bit of a wild man. Anyone who heard of him knew he was happy to indulge in almost any drug available, including H-dog heroin and LSD. Of course, that led to other antisocial behaviour and a run-in or two with the local law. Usually for Butch's tendency to, well, violence was a solution for any disputes Butch had. Even with his far from spotless public image, no one had any idea of quite what he was truly capable of. Any illusions of happiness in the Defeo family home were shattered completely on the 13th, spooky number, of November 1974.
He was really violent, even like growing up. He pulled a gun on his father at one point when he was just a boy, and
Wow.
he actually pulled the trigger.
Wow.
Yeah, but there was like luckily for the father, obviously it misfired.
It misfired. It wasn't even like it was loaded.
It was loaded. It misfired. Yeah, like
Jesus.
this guy's a lunatic, and that was like as a child. And then this is before drugs got involved.
Yeah, before
Guys.
he actually grew up into a hard ass or whatever.
Yeah.
Wow. So at 6:35 on the 13th of November 1974, 6:35 p.m., a call came into the Suffolk County Emergency Switchboard from a man named Joseph Yeswit. Joe had been drinking with friends at a local bar called Henry's when Ronald Jr. had come charging in shouting something about needing help because his mother and father were shot. Yeswit and a couple of others then accompanied Ronald Jr. back to the family home at 112 Ocean Avenue. In each of the 5 bedrooms of the house, they found a scene as eerily calm as it was bloody. Every member of the family was found in the exact same position, laid belly down on their beds, each soaked in a pool of their own blood.
This is like absolutely horrific.
Yeah, it's a real nightmare film.
It really, really is. Like the fact that the killer took the time to position each of the bodies is just terrifying. There's like 2 reasons why a killer would deliberately alter a crime scene or the victim's body position at the scene of murder. So one, you'll sometimes see killers doing what's called staging. So they'll stage a body in an effort to alter the crime scene and like redirect the investigation. For example, like a murderer may move a body into the bathroom and pretend that the victim fell when he or she was getting out of the bath or the shower.
Yeah.
However, some killers will also like to pose the body, which is what's happening here. And posing refers specifically to changing the position of the victim's body, often leaving the victim in like a degrading position. Posing has like 2 main purposes. One is like the gratification of the offender, and 2 is to shock the discoverers of the body or the investigators. Jack the Ripper, he used to pose his victims nude with their legs like spread eagle.
Right,
just to
yeah.
shock onlookers and the police of Victorian England. So yeah, really messed up stuff here.
Yeah. And it was as though they had all been sleeping when they had been killed. Each of the parents had been shot twice and the siblings once, and there was no sign of struggle at all. Eventually, police arrived at the scene and found an apparently badly shaken Ronnie Jr. Once they managed to calm him down, Butch told them that he thought his family had been victims of a mob hit. See, I'm watching The Sopranos right now. The Italians are at it again. Though it didn't appear like other known mob killings, there was a reason to take him seriously when he said this. See, Ronald Defeo Sr.'s uncle was Peter Defeo. Not only a made guy, but he was also capo regime in the Genovese family, which is like, wow, he's
up there.
He's pretty big. He's a big dog. Adding even more credit to the story was that Junior could even give him the name of the man he suspected to be the assassin of his family, Louis Fellini. Fellini was known to the police as a mob associate and was suspected in several earlier mob hits.
There you go. Open and shut case.
Mafia at it again. And Mafia were big in the 70s, so, shit like this, I guess, could happen.
Yeah.
Detectives took his story seriously enough, and they took him into protective custody just in case someone came back to try and finish the job. Now, investigators were able to track down Fellini pretty quickly, and to their surprise, Fellini was able to provide them with an airtight alibi. He'd been out with a lady friend at the time of the murders and had been seen by several people. Suspicions were then redirected towards Ronnie Jr., and detectives began to find a variety of inconsistencies in his story. Each time he told the story, something changed. You can repeat that ad nauseum, by the way, for the entirety of this episode. It's actually very funny how often his story changes. I love it. He's throwing as much possible shit at the wall for his entire life, hoping something will work and something will change.
And every time he gets caught, he was like, no, that wasn't it.
I just remembered. Sorry. Yeah, when I said it earlier, I was lying, but now I'm telling the truth. So
you gotta believe me.
Yeah, exactly. I'm an innocent guy. After hours of interviews, Defeo's story had changed completely. He was now claiming that Fellini and another man, who he didn't know, had woke him up in his room with a revolver to his head. He claimed that Fellini had lived with the Defeos for a while and had helped his father create a hiding place for gems and cash, but there had been a dispute between Ronald Sr. and Fellini over something. Fellini and his friend then led Ronald Jr. from room to room, murdering each of the family members. That is, of course, until the next day, when after 24 hours in custody, Ronald Defeo Jr. finally broke and admitted he was the one who had killed the rest of his family. He told the interviewing detectives, "Once I started, I just couldn't stop. It went so fast." That would not be the last time his story would change. However, the way that the prosecution would tell it at his eventual trial on October 14th, 1975, it would go like this. In the early hours of November 13th, 74, Ronald Jr. had taken his .35 caliber underlever Marlin rifle and shot his father and mother twice each as they slept. He then went room to room, shooting each of his siblings once in the back. When he was asked how he managed to do this without at least using a suppressor to avoid waking the other members of his family, Defeo told interviewing detectives that he'd spiked their earlier evening meal with barbiturates, drugging them, so that they would be defenseless and they wouldn't awaken to the sound of gunshots.
I think the police, they were definitely, I feel they were onto Defeo early on. During the initial investigation of the crime scene, police had found boxes of ammunition for a .35 caliber Marlin rifle inside Junior's room. And ballistic tests confirmed that the rifle to be the murder weapon. So even though they didn't have the murder weapon itself, they found a pile of the same ammunition that was used for the killing in the room of the only person to come out this whole thing alive.
Yeah.
Also, something I did find strange about all this was Butch. He does explain that he spiked his family, which is how he managed to go room to room, killing them with ease. However, this all happened over a 15-minute period. So about 8 gunshots were let off. How did the neighbours not hear anything or report
That's
it?
always a big one.
Yeah, I think that's really strange.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, these houses, they're kind of made of wood, you know what I mean? They're not like thick walls that would contain noise.
Yeah.
You know, this would
echo out
and neighbours would hear it. It's really weird why nobody else ever heard that. And that's there could be a million different reasons why neighbours didn't hear it. But that's, one thing's, supernatural. The ghosts dampen the sound with their shroud of silence. This kind of bullshit. I don't know.
That's good soundproof, man. Is that Rockwell? No, ghosts.
Yeah, even better. Your house is going to be real quick.
Yeah.
So yeah, that is definitely a weird thing. Why it was, because he shot 6 times.
What was it? It was 2 for each of the parents.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. So 8 times then.
8 times. Yeah.
So how nobody? I don't know the gun. Maybe it's not a loud gun. Maybe it's pretty quiet. Yeah. I don't know.
Don't know about guns.
Yeah, I know nothing about guns.
I'll speculate in her.
Yep.
But it was definitely ghosts.
Definitely ghosts. I think we've landed on that pretty conclusively.
This is a .35 Marlin.
Once everyone was dead, Butch took a shower and changed into fresh clothes. He then went around collecting anything that pointed to him as the killer, including the clothing he was wearing at the time and his rifle also, and he bagged them up. On his way into work at the auto dealership where his father was manager, he stopped off at a storm drain, threw away the incriminating evidence. After arriving at work, he simply went about his day as normal, though the other employees found his presence weird. Apparently, though he was employed there, Ronald Jr. very rarely showed up to work, and when he did, he would never stay for the full shift. And he was asked several times why his father hadn't come into work, but he just pretended to have no idea, and even at one point he called the family home, asking, to try and see where his dad was, which is, nobody's answering. Which are all actions that pointed to self-preservation, something that would counteract Defeo's counsel's claims of insanity at the time of the crime. Defeo left work, spent the afternoon with friends, all of whom said that Defeo seemed perfectly normal, and he'd even commented several times to them that he'd been unable to get in touch with his family. That evening, Ronald Jr. went to Henry's bar where he knew his friend Bobby would be drinking, still pretending to be unable to reach his family. So then Ronald left to go home, telling Bobby he was going to have to break a window to get in, almost as if he was expecting nobody to be home, or nobody living to be home. Then, minutes later, as we know, he returned to the bar and, Jesus, shocked! You'll never guess, you never believe this, lads. Pretended he just stumbled onto his family's bodies, bloodied bodies, inside the house.
Definitely, I completely agree with what you're saying about all actions to that point. All the actions he took point to self-preservation. He definitely had the whole thing planned out.
Yeah.
And he really was displaying characteristic psychological traits associated with a family annihilator. So this term it refers to an individual who commits familicide, which is the intentional act of killing their own family members.
Right.
In nearly all cases, these acts of familicide they're premeditated, with the perpetrator considering their family as they consider them possessions. They believe that they hold an authority over their lives. And then the perpetrators of these familicides, they often feel the need to assert and maintain their sense of masculinity, which they closely associate with the family unit. Then they also seek to exert control and dominance over the family members. When they perceive that these factors are being threatened or undermined, that's when they resort to violent and fatal actions against their own families. And I guess the desire to control and overpower the family can also help explain the disturbing act of arranging and posing the bodies
right.
he did as well.
Yeah.
But, real piece of shit.
Real piece of shit. At his trial, less than a year after the murders, Defeo had just about everything possible stacked against him. The prosecution not only had a confession, they had Ronald's 35 after he'd been able to take them to the storm drain where he dumped it after the crime. The rifle then was positively ID'd as the murder weapon. Despite the evidence, though, the prosecution by no means saw it as a cut-and-shut case. Defeo's attorney, William Weber, was known locally for his stubborn defense of his client and throwing everything he could at the jury to have them find Ronald innocent by reason of being legally insane at the time of the crime. It was an unusual trial in that no one, not even the defendant, denied him being the one to pull the trigger and kill the rest of the family. However, the outcome rested solely on Ronald Jr.'s mental state on the night in question. Now, his lawyer, William Weber, tried every single trick in the book, from trying to have the case thrown out because of technicalities, to the insanity plea itself. When he himself was questioned, Defeo was now claiming it was self-defense. It was self-defense. He said just happened to overhear the rest of the family talking about, they're gonna fucking kill me, out of nowhere. So he believed that if he didn't kill his family first, they'd get him,
It was them or me.
Yeah, exactly. Had to be done. So that's just another good one he's telling. Deliberations began, and after the first vote, the jury were 10-2 in favor of Defeo's guilt, with 2 members still unsure about his mental state during the crimes. After further reviewing transcripts of Defeo's police interviews, however, the jury returned a unanimous verdict, and Ronald Defeo Jr. was found guilty of all 6 counts of second-degree murder and slapped with 6 25-year-to-life sentences. Defeo's story of what happened to his family now has changed just so many times over the years, it's likely that not even he remembers what he actually did. One of the most famous renditions of the events of the 13th of November 1974 came from an interview Defeo gave to Newsday magazine in 1986. Now, by then, 1986, Amityville had become, extremely notorious, but not for what Defeo did. Somehow, the family who moved in 1 year after Defeo's had vacated, they became far better known, despite none of them leaving the house in a body bag, but we'll get to that. With interest in the happenings at Amityville at an all-time high, Newsday sent an interviewer to talk with Defeo in prison, and he told them, once again, a completely new version of the murders. Now, he was saying it was his mother, Louise, who had snapped and taken out the children after discovering that Dawn had shot and killed Ronald Sr. You see, the truth about the Defeo family was far from the glossy exterior they presented to the world. Ronald Defeo Sr., it turns out, wasn't quite as successful as the lavish lifestyle the Defeos lived would have people believe. In fact, he hadn't even bought the infamous address himself, instead relying on huge loans from his father-in-law, Michael Brigante Sr. Even the huge, full-sized portraits of each family member that hung in the hall of the Defeo home had been funded by Brigante Sr. to the sweet old tune of 50 grand. No surprise then that to the outside world, knowing nothing of the huge amounts being given by his father-in-law, it seemed that Defeo Sr. was actually doing well for himself when that was not the case. The reality was he made very little money, and nowhere near enough to cover the lavish lifestyles of his large family. And it wasn't only on a financial front that things appeared far from what they actually were. According to Butch, the reason that Dawn had killed her father was because of how physically and emotionally abusive he was to her and the rest of the family. Then, Louise killed Dawn and the other children before getting to Junior, who somehow took the weapon from her and killed her in self-defense. Ronnie also blamed his father's abusive tendencies as the primary reason he turned so intensely to drugs and the drink. No doubt, it really did play a part, and it's also likely why Ronald Jr. was so quick to jump to violence, do drugs, and, do all that to solve his issues. As for the sudden claim that his sister and mother had both been the real killers, Ronnie Jr. said, guys, I was just too afraid to admit the truth. I don't want to say anything bad about my family, you get it? He was also afraid that his grandfather, Brigante, would kill him, which is just a great one.
Complete horseshit. Like, he's a narcissistic, controlling, lying junkie.
Yeah.
With anger issues. Like, there's your problem.
Yeah. Now, of course, his story about Dawn, his sister, and Louise, his mother, being involved is total bullshit. For a start, there is no reason for him to have not come forward with all that sooner, let alone at his trial. After all, if they were willing to protect him from the mafia, I'm pretty sure the police would be pretty good with keeping an angry grandfather away from him. Instead, he relied on his ability or inability to feign insanity through a mix of claiming to be demonically possessed and at even one point claiming not to recognize his own mother, which, I love this. This was also the first time that Junior, I love this by the way, Junior's just, I forgot to fucking tell you guys. I'm married, by the way. Junior was claiming that he had been married to a woman named Geraldine Gates at the time of the murders, and that he had been with her brother, Richard Romando, during the time of the murders. I love this. He's like, can't believe I forgot to mention I'm married and actually have a perfectly good alibi. A guy can actually vouch for where I was that time. So, shit, should have mentioned that earlier before I get 6 life sentences.
That was my bad, guys. That's on me.
Yeah.
But if I could go home now, that'd be cool.
Yeah, exactly. Let me add. The next big development came in 1990 when Defeo filed a 440 motion, which, if successful, would have his conviction overturned. So now in this version of the story,
the courts must be sick of him, because I assume like he's just appeal after appeal after appeal. Like whoever is like the administrator there that has to deal with all that paperwork and all the crap is just see his name come up again. It's like, no,
not again.
No, every week.
This must be like why they limit the amount of appeals he can do or something like that, because of people like him. So now in this version, Dawn and a mystery accomplice were the actual murderers. After Dawn and her mystery boyfriend killed the Defeo parents, the unknown partner fled the scene and left Dawn to finish off her siblings. In this version, Dawn was he also reiterated his earlier claims that, I was actually married and living with his wife and child in Long Beach when the murders took place. Again, probably should have mentioned that. He even submitted a sworn affidavit by his wife's brother, Richard Romando, in which Romando backed up Ronald Jr.'s claims that they'd been together that night and Jr. hadn't actually committed the crime. You would think it would be a good idea to have that sworn affidavit years earlier when he was actually on trial, but, well, it's Butch, so... Unfortunately for old Butch, no one could get a hold of Romando to get him to testify in person rather than just writing it out. Because Richard Romando was a figment of Ronald's imagination. He was just inventing people to be his alibi. Just how he thought that would actually work is beyond any sense, but then again, this is a guy who killed his entire family, so there you go.
I did not realise you would be fact-checking.
Exactly.
Apologies for that. I will let you know when I come up with a different story. I will be in touch. Good day.
And not only that, but it didn't take long for authorities to find out that though Defeo and Gates, they were actually married, they didn't meet until well after the crime, and certainly weren't married at the time of the crime. For a second, Defeo thought he also might be onto something when it was discovered that Dawn did indeed have unburnt gunpowder on her light clothes when she died. But then again, that's actually very, very common when a round is fired in close range. So he thought that meant, oh, well, there you go. She, was loading the bullets herself. It's like, no, having unburnt gunpowder on your clothes does not mean that you were actually loading the gun. Again, clutching at straws. In 2000, Gates gave an interview in which she confirmed she had met Defeo in 1985, married in 89, and divorced in 1993. She also confirmed she didn't have a brother, and Romando was definitely made up by Defeo. Oh my god. And now, his final version had Ronnie Jr. and Dawn conspiring with 2 friends named Audrey DeGennaro and Bobby Kelsky to take out their father and mother together, as he believed they were planning to kill him. So, but by the way, dear listener, if you're struggling to keep up with all of this, you're not the only one. So this guy couldn't even tell you his name without lying, because he'd probably tell you his name was Butch, and then he'd say, no, it's actually Ronald Jr. Once again, the story was found to be completely bullshit, and there's never been any single shred of evidence pointing at, anyone else other than Ronald Defeo Jr. as the sole perpetrator of the murders. And he continued to come up with tall tales until the day he died, aged 69, nice, on the 12th of March, 2021.
Huh? So recent enough.
Recent enough. Yeah, he did. I remember it was in the news when he died. Yeah, it's about a year and a half ago now. 2.5 years ago.
What year are we in?
I have no idea.
Mentally, I'm still 2020.
Mentally, I'm still in 2019. COVID. Since COVID, my like idea of time has just been completely fucked.
Yeah.
I mean, we lost like 2 years due to like lockdowns and shit. So the Lutz story, which, as you know, is far more infamous than the Defeo story, also is partly known to have come from one of his actual defenses, likely thought up by his lawyer, William Weber, as a way to get over just how insane Ronnie was to the jury. Some, including Geraldine Gates, have claimed that over the years, Weber was behind the whole haunting story, and that William Weber even conspired with George Lutz to invent the story of the ghosts, the demons, and the Amityville Horror, which sounds kind of bullshit until you learn that William Weber, Defeo's attorney, also represented the Lutz family. That's a bit weird that he was representing the Defeos and then the Lutzes, and then this story. I mean, he made a lot of money.
So the lawyer was a ghost the whole time?
He's the real horror. Yeah.
Lawyer ghost.
Lawyers, the real horrors.
But Weber, he actually ended up suing the Lutz family for 60 million.
Really?
He sued him for 60 million. He stated that they were stealing his ideas, but the suit settled for 2,500. Even though his plans were to make a large profit, didn't go the way he wanted them to, he still managed to get a total profit of 15,000 for his connections with the book and the movie.
I love that he sued them for stealing his ideas. Like, that's my bullshit story.
Exactly. Yeah. So
just admitting that they made up the whole fucking thing.
Pretty much. So what ended up happening was, so the Lutz family, they moved into the Amityville house about a year after the murders, but they left only after 28 days.
Yeah.
Just abandoning the property and all their stuff.
Yeah.
In September 1977, the Amityville Horror, a true story, gained notoriety. Weber, he attempted to capitalize on the story's popularity. He approached the Lutz family, proposing a joint book deal related to the Defeo case. However, when the Lutz family, when they learned that Weber intended to share the royalties with Defeo, they severed ties with him completely. Weber, he continued independently, but faced a lawsuit from the Lutz family for invasion of their privacy. They settled in 1979. But upset by these events, Weber, he publicly claimed that the story was fabricated by the Lutz family. Although they maintained some supernatural experiences did occur, and he contended that he even provided them with the details from the murder case, which they exaggerated, and then he tried to sue them. So it sounds like a real asshole.
Yeah, exactly.
Or a real a-hole.
So they, claimed weird shit was going on in the house, that there was like what they'd seen a pig man or a demon man.
Yeah.
The daughter was talking to an invisible man.
Yeah, obviously, they were being fed information about the case.
Right. Oh, this is the room where the murders happened when the lawyer, murders happened in all the bedrooms. But you know what I mean? Like, he'd be able to, this is where the killer slept, kind of that kind of shit. And then, there's a ghost in the room. And then, of course, the fucking Warrens get involved and they spout their bullshit. And then it just becomes a whole thing. Nothing has proven to ever happen in the house to begin with. Like, maybe they got the willies when they found out that murders had happened there. But, I mean, there's never been any kind of provable weird shit that actually happened after the murders. They only say they stayed there for a month and then they left. And, so we'll write a book about it then.
Yeah, it's no ball in the attic, I'll tell you that.
Yeah, I know. You have proof. You have videos and you have proof, my friend. We'll be writing a story about this. But the whole story is so fascinating. And, the Defeo family murders are usually just seen as an afterthought, or like we said at the top, they're usually seen as, with the montage you see before you get to the actual Amityville Horror, the prologue, when it's like, that's the real story. Everything that comes after is just pure bullshit. And it all overshadows the real story of the grisly details of a son who went psycho in his own family for seemingly no real reason. I mean, obviously, Defeo denied he did it to the day he died. So we will never really know why he killed his own family, why he went around shooting them all as they slept.
Just went psychotic.
Sometimes people don't need no reason to kill.
All the drugs, the anger, and just psychosis thrown into it as well. Like, it was a lot of hallucinogenic drugs.
Yeah, for sure.
I say just a state of psychosis and then just, lost it.
Yeah. It's a mass murder which in turn spawned, as I said at the top, dozens of films, books, yada, yada, yada. But there is a very real Amityville Horror, but the only demon here is Ronald Defeo. And that is where we will leave this whole episode.
Nice.
Well, I thought it'd be a good one to do for Halloween.
Absolutely,
now that we're posting this in October. I don't know when this episode will go out, but sometime in October.
Yeah.
And So for those who keep asking, hashtag friends of Keith. Keith will appear on that chapter videos at some point. Won't you, Keith? Yeah. You have a cameo, at least, at some point. Yeah. I'd love to actually film these podcast episodes.
Oh, that'd be good. Yeah.
Yeah. Have like but I want a good set and stuff like that. A pretty cool set and stuff like that. And good lighting and shit like that. So it's cool.
What's wrong with this?
Creepy.
It's perfect.
Yeah, I know. The big light shining directly above us. But it'd be kind of cool to have a set. It'd be kind of, maybe it might be interesting for people to watch. I don't know. But yeah.
Let us know.
Yeah, let us know in the comments below. Here, listen, thanks so much for listening, everybody. And yeah, here, the next episode of That Chapter podcast will be out probably next week at some point. We usually try post them on Mondays, but sometimes it's Tuesdays, sometimes it's other days of the week. It's whenever they get done.
Whenever I feel like it, okay?
Yeah, exactly.
Get off my back.
Yeah, exactly. So is mom, so listen. All right, here, listen, thank you so much for listening. You guys have been great. And Keith, you want to say final word for the big K-Dog?
Final word. You always ask me final words, and I never.
I know you never have anything prepared.
I never have anything to
Fuck's
say.
sake.
I should really start preparing like something to say.
Yeah, you should.
I should. I promise.
Keith's
I promise the next episode I'll have something good to say.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I couldn't even think of the word good there.
Okay. Well, we're off to a great start. All right. Thanks, guys. Bye.